You're watching EVH and Gear TV, brought to you by Stewart Travel Guitars. See the incredible stowaway travel guitar at stewartguitars.com. Microphones for EVH and Gear TV are provided by Rode Microphones. And official Van Halen merchandise is provided by VanHalenStore.com. Here's your host from Ontario, Canada, EVH artist Eric Broadbent.
Hey everyone, it is the weekend. Happy Friday to you all. Welcome to EVH and Gear TV. We are live once again. Internet is working good so far. Knock on some artificial wood, ready to rock and roll. And we're joined this evening by a guest we've been looking forward to having on the show for quite some time, from the David Lee Roth Band, from Atomic Punks, Mr. Bart Walsh. Bart, how are you?
Big pimpin'. Doing good, man.
Good to have you here, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great. It's great. We got a great conversation in line for Van Halen fans this evening. As I told you before in the past, you know, depending on certain guests that come on the show, sometimes it's a little sprinkle of Van Halen, sometimes it's lots of Van Halen, and a lot of our core fans, not all of them, but a good chunk of them are big David Lee Roth fans of that era, and I love David Lee Roth. Obviously, you've spent quite some time with the man, so it's going to be very Roth-centric tonight, also talking about some things that you've got going on as well, too. But before we get into all the fun stuff, and there's going to be some great stories that, you know, some people have heard and many people haven't heard, how about you share some of your backstory of your career with some of our fans that might not know your whole story, like kind of where you began in music and maybe leading up to the punks and David Lee Roth and things like that. And we'll save the good stuff for your new project a little bit later in the program.
Cool. Well, I'm from North Carolina originally. And so growing up, it was from a small town, you know, it was agrarian, rural community. And I came from a really large extended family. My great uncle was kind of a famous country and western musician. He was in, like, one of the pioneers of country music, really.
Okay.
His name was Cecil Campbell. He was in a band called the Tennessee Ramblers. And this is back in, like, you know, the Carter family era, you know, Wildwood Flower and, you know, all that early you know, music came out of the hills of Carolina and Tennessee. And so he would come to my grandmother's house on Sundays with his band, and he played like guitar, banjo, lap steel. I mean, those guys back then, you know, they were multi-instrumentalists, and they were just killer. And so I was just a little kid. I started playing when I was 7. And I would sit at his feet, and he would, you know, show me stuff, you know. And so that was like he was my first teacher. And so, you know, my playing was, you know, pretty much kind of steeply rooted in, you know, early country and blues. So, you know, I've always had that, you know, in me. And from there, you know, I started taking a few lessons at your local music store. Mm-hmm. And the first record I ever bought was Grand Funk Railroad live at the Atlanta Pop Festival. And then Machine Head by Deep Purple.
Oh, really?
So that's when I got bit. That's when I'm like, I want to do this.
Yeah.
You know, because before I was, you know, just playing, singing simple country songs and stuff like that. And so I just then started, you know, back in those days, you know, we didn't have, you know, the slow downers, you know, like you have on YouTube now, and the tab books and all that kind of stuff. You had to learn by ear if you wanted to learn anything, and if there's nobody around to show it to you. So you scratch the record, you know, the needle, keep moving it back. And the cassettes came out. And then so you could rewind, you know, a cassette a little bit faster, so that was helpful. But you still had to develop your ear, and that's one thing I always stress on my students and young players is that they've got all these tools, you know, available to them to, you know, help them learn the notes of whatever somebody's playing. But really, you got to develop your ear in order to. That's your greatest asset. I mean, and even Eddie would say that about himself, because I mean, obviously that man has ears. You know what I mean? And it's something that you really need to work on because you're not ever going to, you know, hearing things, or, you know, either in your head or being able to identify them, you know, by listening to them is extremely important for any player. So that's what I did, you know. So then I went on. I had, you know, bands in high school early on. We were playing like, you know, school dances and things like that. And I was making more money in one night than I did at my dad's shop the whole week.
That's great.
So I'm like, let me see, chicks, party, money, versus, okay, I think I'll go with the music.
I think so too. That's right.
So that was a pretty easy decision. And so but after high school, I decided to go, what I was going to do. That's when everybody gets real or whatever. So I went to college. Well, I should say I was enrolled in college. Majored in kegs and legs.
Yeah, I love it. That's great.
And so, but I really, I was kind of really trying to seek out better players and see, who I could find. What's over that hill over there, And so I went to East Carolina University for about 3 years, or 2 years. And during that time, I got in a Southeastern Circuit band and dropped out of school for a semester and just toured around the South. So I cut my teeth, real young, six sets a night in the clubs, and we were playing everything from Iron Maiden to Bryan Adams to Van Halen. It was all over the map. And so that was a really great early formal education, because when you play 5, 6 sets a night, you learn how to what stamina is, how to pace yourself, how to all those kind of things, and a variety of music and just performing in clubs. I can't, like kids and people ask me, well, what do I need to do in music? How can I get to the people? And I said, play out. Just play out.
Agreed 100% on that one.
I never got anything by knowing someone in particular. You know what I'm saying? When I moved, and I'll tell that story in a minute, when I moved to LA, I didn't know anybody. I was there by myself. But the only way I got connections and stuff like that was to play in the clubs. That's
someone comes in and you meet them, and
right.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you're honing your chops, because let's face it, when you're playing club gigs, something's going to go wrong.
Oh, of course, and they will. It's not a matter of if; it's a matter of just when's going to go wrong.
Right. So you've got to learn how to handle all those situations and hold your composure and stuff like that. And I mean, it is, and soak up the ambiance of the whole experience. It makes you a better player. And but so when I was 19, 20, somewhere in that area, I kind of hit a plateau in my playing, and I played in these popular bands around the South and stuff like that, and I was just like, man, I just want to get better on guitar. So I looked at Berkeley, I'm going, it's too friggin' cold in Boston, man. I'm not going up there. And there weren't a lot of contemporary guitar programs around like there are now in schools and stuff like that. So GIT had just started not too long before that, and so I auditioned, and I got in, and you actually had to audition back then.
Yeah, not just pay.
Yeah, right. They wouldn't just take anybody. And you actually had to. And so I went out there in '85, and I started marching in '85. So I got a funny story about it. First day I got in there, had my tuition check. I rolled up to Grauman's Theater, in Hollywood, and parked my car. Here's this country bumpkin. It's like Drummer Powell goes to the big city. And so, I walked down Hollywood Boulevard, and the school in those days was on the corner of Highland and Hollywood Boulevard, and it was across from the Wax Museum.
Okay.
And you entered by Elvis's Star. That's how you knew it was a back door kind of thing.
Okay.
And it was in an older building. And so I went into the office and met the admissions lady. Said, I'm here. My name's Bart Walsh, and here's my tuition check. And so she did, some of the paperwork and said, well, go ahead and walk around the school if you want to. I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm walking around the school, and I start walking down this one hall, and there's not hardly anybody in it. It was in between sessions. I hear this. I'm like, what the F is that? I mean, I'm like, is that a guitar player?
Yeah.
I'd seen Yngwie play at that point, He was probably, but this was something different. I mean, it was so just. I kept walking toward it, and I look in the room, and there's this tall guy playing an Epiphone Wilshire with a necktie for a strap. It was Paul Gilbert.
I was going to say Paul Gilbert. Wow.
And so I was like sheepishly walk in and go, hey, I'm Bart. He goes, hey, I'm Paul. And so, and we struck up a friendship, for years after that. I used to hang around. I used to live with the guys in Racer X, Bruce Bouet and John Already. So I got real close with that band. But so I'm. Oh my God. A player that still terrifies me to this day. I mean, his right hand is so good. I mean, it's like, he's got the best right hand guitar player I've ever seen in my life.
I think he does.
What's that?
I think he does. Something I really love about him as well too. I'm sure you find this as well too. he makes guitar. I'm going to put him on a pedestal for a second. I want to kind of compare him to a couple sports celebrities. Back in the day, I loved football for Joe Montana, and Joe Montana's retired now, and Jerry Rice. Those two guys made me love football. You know, Michael Jordan would make you like basketball. You know, I hate basketball, but he made me like basketball. Tiger Woods make me like golf. You know, all these different people. Okay, and that's kind of the analogy I'm trying to give. Paul Gilbert it just makes you love guitar, even if you don't even know what guitar is. He just plays, he shreds, and then he's just smiling, and it's infectious. And
he has such a passion for the instrument.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, one thing about Paul that people don't know, I mean, he's a huge Beatles fan.
Yeah, he's huge. Yeah, huge fan.
And so, you know, I am too. And so, like, you know, Green Tin 60's Mine was, you know, on the Mr. Big record that, you know, he wrote was kind of a Beatlesque kind of thing. So, and his musicality is just, you know, everybody knows him for his shred and stuff like that. But he still tries to get better after, you know, all these years. He still, so then I'm like, holy crap, man, that guy. So then I start walking down the hall, and I hear, it's like this. I never really heard anything like it. You know, I mean, I knew kind of what sweep picking was.
Sure.
A little bit, but this was different. This was like, this guy was just doing, you know, major nines and, you know, diminished and augmented sweeps and stuff. And I walk in, and the second guitar player I see after I get off, you know, Hollywood Boulevard and into school, first day in LA, Frank Gambale.
Oh, man. Treat number two.
Number two. So then I'm like, I talked to him for a minute. He was really cool. And so then I'm walking in the hall and I hear this band playing, and it sounds like Steve Morse. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I go in, it's Jimmy Herring.
Okay.
I don't know who Jimmy Herring is, but he's in Widespread Panic now. He's in a band called Bruce Hampton and the Korean Rescue Unit. I mean, and he had the Telecaster, and he was playing all that Morse stuff, note for note. It turned out he was from my hometown, my home state, North Carolina. He's a great guy, real nice. So I went and talked to him. So then I'm like, I'm just dejected. I'm just going, man. I said, I'm like, is everybody in LA this good? I don't stand it. So I went into the office to the missions lady saying, can I go to the Bass Institute?
Yeah. Maybe I checked into the wrong school. But what a welcoming.
I contemplated it for a minute. You know, I was like, maybe I should just play bass. But I didn't realize I just saw probably, you know, three of the top flight guitar players in the planet, you know.
Yeah, and you've been there for like 5 minutes practically.
Right. And then I found out, you know, there was a lot of hot guitar players in LA, but I mean, not everybody was like that. So, you know, and I stuck with it. And Paul, you know, it was inspiring. I took some lessons from him and stuff, and you know, I subscribed to, you know, learned a lot. I can't pick scales like that, you know. You know, and he and Bruce Bouillet, you know, were just. I don't know if you know the Racer X stuff, the early stuff.
Oh yeah, I do for sure. I followed it very closely.
Yeah, I mean, you know, just sick. You know, it was like they were like, you know, the heavy metal Dixie Dregs. You know, and I mean, it was just, you know, it was shocking. You know, it was so tight and so good, and but I stayed with it. You know, and they inspired me to, you know, practice. When I lived up in North Hollywood with Bruce and John, I mean, you know, we were practicing after we got out of GIT, you know, 8 hours a day. And
nice.
So that's what made my kind of quantum leap into stuff. And but before I did that, Paul's I ended up getting an apartment just coincidentally right next to his in the next building. So his window and my window were real close together, and I would hear him practicing all the time. You know, so I was like, I can't get away from this guy, so I might as well. You know, join in, and so I mean, I can't say enough good stuff about Paul. He's just, you know, just unbelievable. And so I ended up, you know, graduating from the school, and then I started teaching. You know, I started getting, you know, teaching jobs right out of, you know, the gate there, and in LA, you know, it was hard for a rocker to make money. You know.
Oh, it is.
So you know, this was back in the days. I mean. Then I moved in. At one point, I lived down on Gardner Street, which, if you know the area or anything like that, it's Gardner and Sunset by the Guitar Center there. And Guns N' Roses rehearsed just right up the street at the warehouse. It was in 1985, you know, before they got signed.
Yep.
So I hung out with those dudes, you know, and I mean, it was happening. I mean, strip was happening back then. But you didn't know since you were inside of it, it always seemed like, the bands that drew and went, were on a plateau, they had something, and those are the ones that ended up going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But, basically, you just, when you're closer friends with all these people, there's just another knucklehead that you hang out with.
That's right. Well, that's how it's helped you throughout your career as well, too. These guys were more, instead of being like idols to you, they were one with you. You were just another cool guitar player on the scene. You weren't like the Paul Gilberts and all these other guys. You were just dudes.
Yeah, and so from there, I had I formed with my drummer, who's actually the drummer in Atomic Punks now, Scott Patterson.
Right.
And I had been in bands, since I was 18 years old, since college with him. And so he moved out. We formed a band called Lancia. And we were a pretty big strip band, and we ended up getting signed to Pony Canyon, which was Japan, which was extremely lucky because it was in '91 when grunge hit.
Okay.
And when grunge hit, it was like a neutron bomb was dropped on the strip, and it went from being happening and everything on it to like tumbleweeds.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, I can picture that. Yeah, it's just like, what just happened? It's like it's almost like the apocalypse in a way.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it really was, because everything was so antithetical to hair metal and all that kind of stuff. And I had some guys in that band. John Billings, the bass player, who is phenomenal. Phenomenal. He's one of the best bass players, in my opinion, that I've ever played with, other than Billy Sheehan. And he went on to play with Donna Summer, and he's a big session guy in Nashville, Wooten Brothers. I don't know if you know who they are, but he's done a lot of stuff. And so the band was good, singer was okay, and we got a deal in Japan. So that record sold some, and they wanted to do a second one.
Okay.
And by this time it was like '93, and it was in the throes of grunge at that point, and everybody's trying to figure out what they're going to do, all the rockers, because I mean it was so bad at one point that record companies had to remove the word heavy metal or Los Angeles from the vernacular in any bios that they had, because it was so,
stereotype them.
I mean, yeah, it was like, you couldn't say, if you said you were from LA, you were done. I mean, it's like, so it went from the happening place to like being, the death warrant.
And before it was the opposite. If you could claim you're from LA, you had a foot in the door.
Yeah, I mean, so that we were going to do a second record, and I started writing for that and everything. But our singer got involved in some things he shouldn't have got involved in.
Okay.
And started missing rehearsals. Then started missing headlining shows.
Mm.
And we'd have a show at the Roxy, we're headlining it, and it's almost sold out. He didn't show up at all.
Not
and
good.
It happened another time at another club called FM Station in the Valley. And people who are familiar with that era of music in Los Angeles know these clubs. And so I'm like, oh, here we go again. I got to find another damn singer.
Go through that whole rigmarole again.
I mean, it was just, pretty much kind of being the bane of my existence, and it's just part and parcel.
Mm-hmm.
We depend on them. They have to have. We need them. They need us. But we have to kind of always have this contentious kind of relationship. And so I called John already from Racer X, and they had recently been auditioning singers. So Racer X broke up, and they formed the Scream. They got John Corabi, but he knew. He had a short list of guys he really liked, and he says, "You should call this guy Ralph Saenz. You can check him out." So I'm looking up what band he's in and all this kind of stuff, and he's playing at this place called the Palomino one Wednesday night, and I walked in, and it was, and the band was great. Mitch Perry was in it. Okay. And Sean McNabb, if you know who Mitch is. Mitch is a fantastic guitar player.
Yeah.
And I'm checking them out, and there's nobody in the club, and they can't get signed. There were some long hairs playing metal. So I told Ralph, I said, look, I got a deal, lost my singer. He literally lost my singer. I can't find him.
Have you seen him? Where is he at?
I started put some of those flyers up on poles and stuff.
Have you seen this guy? Yeah. Reward. That's great.
And so Ralph, I talked to him. I said, maybe you can come down and check it out. And I had to call him twice.
Yeah.
Of course. Right.
Yeah.
So he comes down, and he hadn't learned any of our original material or anything like that yet. I said, let's just jam on some covers. So we were playing some classic rock stuff, and I go, hey, any Van Halen? Now I hadn't made the connection of him and David Lee Roth yet. I didn't really, when I saw him in 7% Solution, he was singing in a kind of a great tone, but it wasn't like full on like a Dave singer or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I hadn't made that, I didn't make that connection yet. So he goes, his eyes get real big. He goes, yeah, man, I know all the Halen. I'm like, okay. And so me and the drummer, Scott, we played some of that stuff in college. And it had been years but we busted it out and got through it. And I was taping the session. And when he was singing, I'm kind of like, what the? Is he? You really sound like? Am I hearing one of the guys?
It sounds pretty darn good, right?
Yeah. And so I take the tape home and I play it. I'm like, holy crap! I said, he sounds like Roth. We sound like Van Halen.
Yeah.
And there were no tribute bands when we started in LA. I mean, you didn't play covers, and you may throw one in the original set, but no one did that because everybody was trying to get signed, right?
I know, right?
So, maybe in some of the outlying areas, but not Hollywood. You didn't play, you did not play covers, and so I ended up calling the club owner. Filthy McNasty was his name. He's just this German guy that owned FM station. That's what it stood for, and we had a gig booked there, with my other band. I said, Filthy, I can't find my singer, and I want to honor this date. I don't want to cancel on you, but I've got this other guy, and we want to. And I called the guys up and talked to them about it. Ralph and the drummer and the bass player. We want to just do a set of Van Halen. It's like I guess it's called a tribute. I didn't even really know what a tribute band was.
Yeah, the word was new.
And so I said, I guess okay. And so we would just do it one time. We just thought, I just to cover this gig, and then I was going to, move on to the original stuff. And because I didn't want to come out with my original band and a new singer like right out, and the show was only like in 2 weeks or some shit like that. And so he goes, what are you going to call it? And I hadn't even thought about that yet. I'm like, and I looked down, I had a Van Halen tab book from my teaching stuff, and it was flipped over as Van Halen 1. I looked at the track listing on the back of it, and I go, Atomic Punks.
There you go, that's the name. Perfect.
And so we did that, and people freaked out, and it was just wasn't planned. It was just a fluke, and it was like when we got together, it just the chemistry between all four of us, or whatever, it just clicked, as far as that music is concerned. Because they were such a huge influence on all of us,
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's around the same age and stuff like that, and Van Halen was my band. Everybody had a band. Where they have every record and every track listed on every song and all the history and stuff like that. Well, that was me with Van Halen, and so the club owner's like, the word got around really fast. He says, "People love this. Come back. We want you back in a week." I'm like,
as the new tribute act, yeah.
And then the show started becoming sold out after that. Word spread so fast. But the thing was, I was like, oh shit! Now I got to learn this stuff. Right.
Yeah, because you're going to be judged.
Yeah, I'm like, what have I done?
You just created a monster.
And so, I kind of knew it when I was, younger, when I learned it when I was 16, 17, stuff like that. But I didn't have the chops then to really, and the stuff. And so, and even when I, had the Atomic Punks, I was so busy. I used to teach like almost 70 students a week in LA.
Wow, that's
and
a
I
lot.
had band, and I also did sessions, and I had a recording business. I was so busy. I had more time to get it down, but I didn't have as much time to say, that I wanted on everything. Even when I got in Dave Roth's band, he throws stuff at you constantly, like we were talking about last night. And, I had a couple weeks to learn a song. In some cases, I had to learn a Van Halen song in 2 days and go perform it live. He would just throw it in the set. Because I didn't know the whole catalog. I still don't know all the songs now, but now that I'm doing this thing that we'll talk about later, I'm trying to get more inside of it and try to get it more accurate. And I had it down pretty decent. Some of the stuff, and so the punks just got huge. It was silly.
They kind of started it all for sure. I know here in Canada, same thing as well too. There was nothing when it came to Van Halen tributes, and I joined one in the late '90s. and it was the only band around at the time as well too, 5150, and they were the Canadian Van Halen tribute band. It was more Sammy Hagar era as opposed to what you're doing with the classic Roth era.
Right.
But what I think is very cool about what you did, and I would just love to be able to pick that club owner's brain or be that fly on the wall at the time. So you being the consummate professional that you are, you don't want to cancel a gig. You don't want to leave him high and dry because you burn a bridge and you don't get a gig again.
Right.
You come through, you pull up some tricks out of your sleeve, you do a Van Halen tribute on the fly. Next thing you know, it becomes very popular. Not only did you save your butt and save the club owner, look what it turned into. I mean, what a fantastic career. But before we go any further with that, I just want to jump over to the chat for a quick sec. We got a bunch of people say hi to, and I see a couple things of some real celebration for some people, so we'll share with that as well too. And we'll come back, we'll talk a little further about punks in a second. So Brad Miller is here, Buzz Gravely is here, Ladybug, Carlo Santin, Nocturnal Butterfly, my beautiful better half running the chat, Defcon Clark with salutations, and I want to make sure I get the announcement 100% correct from Defcon. I want to see where this is here. He says, this is a round of applause for him. Defcon Clark says, I have an announcement, 6 years sober today. Congratulations, Defcon. That is phenomenal. Very, very happy for you. That's a monumentous accomplishment. Let me see here. Janice Lala is here. See if I miss anybody else. Brad Miller mentioned that. Nocturnal Butterfly, congrats on to DEFCON. Sonia is here, one of our moderators. Todd Flowers, Evan Ward, Bobby Clipper is here. Let me see. Gary Holt is here. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Bobby Clipper mentioned that, I'm pretty sure. Evan Ward is here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Dave R's Guitarist, nice to have you. Let me see here. Continue on here. Let's go back here to Todd Flowers. I mentioned Todd, and I think I'm down almost to the bottom of the chat unless I froze. I did freeze, so I'm going to go backwards. Guitar Hack is here. Just did a nice stream a while ago. Right out of the box TV. Brian Cote is here. Let me see here. Let's see if I missed anybody else. Mel O'Brien. Man, we got a nice round of people in the chat tonight. Very, very happy. Quentin James. I'm sorry if I didn't mention my good friend Quentin, and he is a big fan of Shred, so he is going to he's going to love what he's going to see tonight. Let me see. Oh, I think I saw. Where's Adam Roach from Another Grip podcast I follow all the time. He says, "Hey, Eric and Bart, looking forward to having Bart on the podcast soon." Very nice. Great. Let me see here. Who else have I missed? And I you know what I'm going to do, Bart? As I mentioned to you earlier, I'm going to pull off my camera to you just for now because I am getting reports of my camera lagging. Okay, so my camera is off to you, and I will try to bring it back in throughout the evening if I can. It's just it's lagging for the audience. Let me see here. All right, I think Michael Easter is here as well too. Rat Wolf. Let me see here. I think I might have almost got everybody. I don't want to miss anybody. If I have, I greatly apologize. It's hard sometimes to get everybody. I'm the worst person for reading the chat, and everyone knows it. I don't claim to be the fix on that. So let's go back. Let's continue with the punks just for a minute. So we got the punks going. You're out there doing the tribute thing, and all of a sudden it became kind of a national and international thing. Tell us where the punks went to as far as like how big like you covered as far as touring and things like that.
Well, we basically were a Southwestern band. I mean, we went to San Diego, Phoenix, San Francisco, Los Angeles. We played in LA mostly. LA being so big, the clubs were, everywhere. And it's just, kind of weird because, other than maybe, the drummer from the punks, and me, Ralph, and the drummer probably played the clubs in Southern California longer than anybody that I even know. Because most guys don't do that. Because you can't make a living in those clubs. But I figured it out because I made money in my original band, and I made money in the punks, actually a good living in the punks.
Yeah.
And, so, we still played the Strip, the Whiskey and, Roxy and all those clubs and stuff like that, Key Club, which is, used to be Gazzari's.
Right.
So, it was just a big part of the culture. It's like, a lot of people is, what are you going to do tonight? Oh, the punks are playing, man. Let's go there. And the club owners loved us because the Van Halen fans would drain the bar.
Yeah.
It was it's party music, and they were big drinkers, And so, it was very successful. I mean, we probably could have done more touring, internationally, but guys had, other things that they really cool that far. I mean, we were almost a house band at FM station for a while. I mean, we do Friday, Saturday night, once a month there, and so it was a great gig, and it became like this known thing, like it attracted started attracting people, celebrities and stuff like that, rock guys, like Billy Sheehan. That's how I met Billy. He came in and sit in one night with us, and then I did some pickup gigs around LA with him and Ray Luzier, and this was before I was in Roth's band. And all kinds of people, like Jeff Scott Soto would come down and sing. He's a Sons of Apollo singer.
Yeah, he's great.
Tracy Guns. It's just Michael Anthony showed up one night unannounced. And that was just, we used to play a strip club in Pasadena. It was kind of Van Halen's old backyard over there.
That's right, it is.
And so Michael showed up there with his entourage one night, and no one knew he was going to do it. I didn't even know he was coming. And I became friends with everybody in the camp. That was Van Halen, or their surrounding support groups like the Inside Magazine, Jeff Dugan's, Michael's Tech. And so he played 7 songs with us, and when that guy sang, it was unbelievable. I'm like, oh hell, so this is what it feels like to be in Van Halen. And he was into it too. So we did. I think we did like Romeo Delight and Light Up the Sky and On Fire. I mean, like the real, kind of obscure tracks, but the real, heavy, fast, intense ones.
Yep.
And
deep cuts.
So it became that thing, and that's kind of how I caught Dave's attention, Dave Roth, because we were just known. I mean, Van Halen, it's like I met Eddie through that whole thing because I became friends with Matt Bruck, his tech.
Yeah, his tech. Yeah.
And I can tell that story in a minute if you're
sure.
ready.
Oh, yeah,
for
we'd love
it.
to hear that. Yeah.
Okay. So, and Dave would come to see us in clubs. I know he knew he was there, but he was incognito, with his hat and his sunglasses and pulled down. It's like he didn't want, to get mobbed. But funny thing about him, it's like the place that he always felt most at home was strip clubs. If I ever needed to have a meeting with him, I'd go to Crazy Girls which was down on La Brea in L.A. Well-known strip club out there. I don't know if it's still there anymore, and he'd have his usual corner table over there. That's how I communicated with him a lot of times.
Sounds like Roth.
When we were off the road, I went to the strip club to have a business meeting, which was fine with me. I love the ambiance.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, back to the Eddie thing. So, we were just known, throughout the community, as this really killer band. And Ralph was so good at what he did. And the guy nails Roth to a T.
Yeah.
And Ralph, one thing about him, he's the best singer I've ever worked with. The guy is a phenomenal voice. And, right around the same time, he was doing his Boogie Nights thing, and then Metal Shop, which was a forerunner to Steel Panther, started.
Okay.
But I'll do that in a minute. I know that's one of the questions you want to talk about. But so I spawned a million bands out of this thing. It's like, so I went to see Matt Bruck's band open for this other band one night. He was playing at FM station, again, FM station. And Eddie was there. And so Matt, obviously knew what Eddie meant to me, what an influence he was, and all that kind of stuff. So he introduced us. I went over to the table, and I'm like, I was so nervous, And all I can think of saying how he was talking about how nervous he was when he met Clapton.
Right, right, his hero.
His hero. And I was just like, and so that's what I said to him. I said, I'm so nervous right now. I call him Mr. Van Halen. I'm so nervous right now. How it's kind of like you said when you met Clapton. You said, man, don't worry about that. Just be, it's cool. I love what you guys do. Because I didn't know what he was going to say.
Yeah.
Whether he thought it was, ripping him off or, when it was really paying homage. I do this stuff with a great deal of respect for him. I don't think I'm Eddie Van Halen. I don't think I can play as well as Eddie Van Halen. I'm not, I would never make a claim like that. But, that guy, set me on a path. I'll talk about that in a second when I first heard that. I don't know if this was for you, but for a lot of people, and it's one of the impetus things that I want to do. I'm also doing a short film that's going to run with the 6 Degrees of Van Halen thing that I'm getting ready to do, project I'm getting ready to do next. most people know where they were. It's like, you know, you knew where you were when JFK got shot or Challenger blew up or whatever. Where you were and who you were with the first time you heard Van Halen.
Yeah, or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
It was so impactful. It's just life-changing stuff that you're just like, I mean, you know, and I'll tell that story real quick and then I'll get back to Eddie.
Sure.
I was, you know, I was known in school, in high school, I guess probably I was in 9th grade, as a good guitar player. And, you know, the only thing I ever knew, you know, I was a Ted head. You know? I would play Stranglehold for hours with my band and stuff like that, and learn how to play. So I cut my teeth on Ted, and then Page, and you know, Joe Perry, and all that stuff. You know, the usual. But Clapton was actually my first influence too, because there was nobody really out. So I was so young when I started playing. I got my first electric when I was 11. That Clapton was the guy. You know, and so those were some of the first solos I listened to. But at that particular time, I was in Nugent. So there was this kid at school. He was going to hear this new band, Van Halen, great. And he kept bugging me. I'm like, I ain't nobody better than Ted Nugent or Jimmy Page. This is impossible because you can hear this guitar player. So he finally put a cassette in my locker, and because we had gym class together, I'm like, okay, whatever, man. I took it home. I put it on, and I had a little rehearsal studio. I mean, my dad had built up behind my house. It was like this 20 by 20 cinder block building. I had all my gear in there, and I turned that on, sit back, rolled one, lit it up, and dropped. You know, when it dropped in, and after Eruption was done, I was done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was so intense that I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, what instrument it was, keyboards or what?
Or what, but all I knew is that I wanted that.
Yeah.
Not maybe actually, you know, to play just like him, what I started out doing, but I wanted that thing that he had that moved me that way.
Yeah.
I wanted to try to do that for other people, you know, and myself.
Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, so I kind of, and so by, you know, that point I was a fan. But then, you know, I moved to GIT, to LA and went to GIT, and I got influenced by, you know, guys around me, Paul Gilbert and that kind of stuff. So I kind of didn't listen to Van Halen for a while. You know, probably a good, 5-6 years. Kind of like, then I remember one night, it was before the punk started, and I think it kind of sent me on another course. I popped in Van Halen 1 again. Same thing happened.
Brought you back again, didn't it?
I mean, it's like every time. I mean, it's the same like with this stuff that I'm doing for 6 Degrees of Van Halen project. It's always fresh. Every time I listen to it, after I'm away from it for a while, I just never get sick of it. Except, when you're playing it too much and you're on tour and stuff like that, you're not going to sit around and listen to it. But I always go back to it. It's always in my, in my playlist on my, phone or in my, iTunes. And so it's just, it's evergreen. It's what they call it in the business. And for me, it was even more than that. I mean, it was,
I don't think the band ever set out to make timeless music, but they did. They accidentally did. They just wanted to make music that, kick people in the ass and kick themselves in the ass. But it is timeless music. Yeah, like you said, it's twice now, or even 3 times, multiple times, you've been brought back to that day. And another 20 years from now, you're going to pop on. It's not going to be a cassette probably anymore. It'd be like, CDs, MP3s, whatever the case may be. But you're going to be brought back again. We all are. It's a timeless thing. And I've always said to people too, if there was ever a time capsule, this could represent rock, and this could represent Van Halen, or if you want to take it a step further, it could represent rock and roll as a whole. Grab Fair Warning on vinyl and make it a digitized copy too for the aliens or whoever's going to find this thing out in space. Make this time capsule, and that's that.
Like, it's for the aliens. Remember in Back to the Future when Michael Fox pops in that tape? It's Van Halen.
Melts his brain. That was great. Yep.
He thought it was a spaceman.
Yeah.
Or she rather, and so. That was great.
I love
that.
But
I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's sea change moments. Like, I mean, Chuck Berry was one.
Yeah, I agree with that. Johnny B. Good, man. I love
Elvis, the Beatles, Van Halen. I mean, I really and Hendrix. Yep. I look at 3 guitar players. Really, everything else is derivative. There's 3 main guys: Chuck Berry, Jimi Hendrix, and Eddie Van Halen.
Nice.
And everybody else, kind of taking what they did because they there was nothing like them before they came along, and everybody just kind of built on that.
Exactly. I agree on that 100%. And Chuck Berry doesn't always get the credit he deserves. And I've said this a few times on my show before too. One of my sister's boyfriends, my sisters always went out with musicians, which was great. Bass players and guitar players, and they taught me a lot of stuff. And this one...
She didn't go out with drummers because they're not musicians.
No, I want to be careful though, because I got some drummer friends. But I agree with you on that. But the one boyfriend of my sister there, he took me out to the shed and said, okay, I'm going to give you some wood shedding licks. And these are called licks and cliches, or maybe it was riffs and cliches. I forget how he called it. But it was the typical Chuck Berry stuff. It was some B.B. King stuff. It was some Clapton stuff. And it was some Hendrix stuff. And he says, these are riffs and cliches. You learn these half a dozen or a dozen that he showed me. And he says, now go listen to anything on the radio. You're going to hear every one of these. And sure enough. And that's what it was.
That's right. I mean, it's like Chuck Berry and Eddie Van Halen was playing when he's doing it. Those
totally.
Things, and Clapton, all of them, so they listened to, it was impossible to escape it. It was, and the Beatles for songwriting and Elvis too, what they did, Ed Sullivan's show and that changed stuff, but that's another story. But set got done, we were talking, and it's like, you want to come out in the car, listen to the new record? And he goes to Matt, he goes, is he cool? Yeah, he's cool.
So you're going to the car with Eddie Van Halen.
So we went out in the car with Eddie Van Halen. This was right before Balance came out.
Oh, nice.
So he just finished Balance. So we go out there, and he's got like a case of Heineken in the back.
Of course he does.
And so this is like, it's a brand new Mercedes. And I think he probably had it a week or something like that, but the sticker was still on the side of the window.
Yeah, he hasn't even taken off the dealer sticker.
I'm like, okay, so this is what it was like to be a rock star. I can deal with this. and so it was really late. We sit out, and we're probably out there, hour and a half to 2 hours, something like that. And we just broed out. I mean, it was one of the greatest nights of my life. I mean, to spend that time with your idol, a guy that had so much influence on you. And I asked him everything I could possibly think of. I've always wanted to know. One of them being, we talked about this last night, is what his earliest musical influences were. And I kind of knew probably what the answer was going to be, but I was curious. He said his dad's horn playing, because I mean, and Alex said that too. It's the first thing I remember, his dad practicing clarinet sax around the house.
That's the first sound they heard probably in the home.
Yeah, and that influences playing immensely, because he's a legato player. He plays more like a sax player, with all the kind of that kind of legato kind of stuff.
Yep.
And so it's a real phrasing, thing that only horn players do. And then I asked him, like, what was it, his signal path on Van Halen 1, because I was always obsessed with that record. He told me what that was, and because I always chased that tone. I'm still chasing that tone.
Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of times Eddie forgets. He'll do 3 different interviews and give you 3 different answers.
Yeah, and some of that probably was intentional in the beginning, but now I think it's just so much time has passed, and he tried so much shit.
Yeah,
I mean,
hard to remember.
I have a friend, Dave Marshall, that he's a great guitar player, and we're very much into the Van Halen stuff, so we talk about it all the time. It's like, what was you using now? Hear this, hear that. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And I try to achieve that in my profiles too, that I do. And we can talk about that whenever you're ready about the gear stuff.
Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do that next. Actually, I want to say something about in the chat in a second, and we'll come back to that. But yeah, keep going.
So, I was sitting out there, and I just, we just broke out, and he was like, I go, Eddie, you had so much influence on me. You're the king, man. He goes, oh, I'm just one of you guys, man. I'm like, man, how cool is that?
Exactly. Yeah. Level-headed, totally.
I go, no, you're not.
You're a god.
Clear that up right now. It's like, I'm here, and because and I guess it really, I can always tell it's hard on him too, because he did so much. People expected so much more. He could top himself every single time. I think that's why he left guitar. Went to Sammy's band, because he probably got tired of trying to compete with himself, because that's what he did.
Of course.
From record to record to record, it was something new that he came up with that just broke more ground, technique-wise.
Technique, tone, recording, engineering. He became a great engineer. Always reinventing himself.
Yeah, and so, and I call it, he's like the Bach of rock. You're 400 years, 1,000 years from now, you remember Eddie Van Halen as one of the premier composers of the 20th century.
I like that. I like that analogy. That's really good.
You know, I mean, like people remember Mozart, remember, you know, Bach, they remember, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, so that's what I've always viewed it as. I mean, it's how important, you know, and a lot of times you have to get time away from it to realize that. And I've had that, you know, recently, because I mean, it's like these Van Halen songs I'm getting ready to play in this new band. I ain't played some of these songs in 20 years. You know?
And they can be frightening when you go back to them.
Yeah, I mean, it is and it isn't. I mean, I'm taking more time trying to, you know, get, you know, the tones exactly like the record and with my Kemper, and you know, trying to get inside of the tunes a little bit more. And it's just, you know, and it's always been a labor of love. Therapy is what I call it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's total therapy, because, you know, Van Halen always makes you feel good.
I agree with that 100%. No matter what it is, you have a bad day in the office, bad day in a relationship, you pop on Van Halen, no matter what it is, and all of a sudden it's just like, it might take a minute. It's not maybe instantaneous, because you just can't change your attitude that quickly, but within a few seconds or a few minutes, you forget what your problems are. They might come back after the record's done, but you're in a good moment when you're listening to it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the mark of a true magician in artistry, you know, that can make people feel that, you know. And that's what Van Halen was to me. I mean, it was always, they were a party band. They were about good times. They weren't. I mean, you know, Fair Warning was a little bit of a darker record, but at the same time, it was still heavy and aggressive and adrenaline pumping. You know, Van Halen 1 and 2, you know, big party albums.
Yes.
And so after, you know, I talked to him for, you know, he's like, I'm like, man, don't you have to go home to Valerie or something? Oh, and he played the unreleased Balance record to me. Mm-hmm. And we was starting to have problems with Sam at that point, and he intimated it to me. And but you know, it was just a great night, and I learned a lot. You know, just from you know, talking to him and stuff like that.
Well, the cool thing is they always say, you know, don't meet your idols, and that can really crush you. I remember my mom always saying to me too. She goes, "If you meet this Van Halen guy, what if he's a jerk?" And you know, I met him 3 times, all at the same era, and he was in a good place. You know, he's had his troubles here and there, and that's what we're not here to talk about that this evening. But I met him during the good times. You met him in some good times. And that's really, really nice when you meet him and you're treated like an equal. I mean, with a god. I mean, he is a god to us. I shouldn't say that he's a god to the world, but I mean, he's a god to the guitar community for sure. I don't want to put, you know, anybody on a higher pedestal. He's a dude like us, puts his pants on the same way at the end of the day, but he just happens to play some kick-ass guitar. But that is a phenomenal experience. I just want to say one thing in the chat real quick. A couple other people that jumped in. We've got Charles Green here as well too, and we have another congratulations to mention too. And we were talking about some people overcoming you know, actually celebrating sobriety. Rock and Roll Guitar Lounge is 9 months celebrating today, so this is really cool. A couple of really cool.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. Marsman is here as well too. And I haven't scrolled any further in the chat yet. But let's do this. Let's take a second. Oh, actually, Ron Pio as well says he saw Bart with, I'm afraid to scroll too far. I scrolled too far and I lost him. But Ron saw you play with the Punks. Oh, here it is. With the Punks at Pinky's in Las Vegas back in '97. So that is cool. You and I were talking yesterday about tone, and we're talking about what you're using today. So this would be a great segment. I know people love it here on the show when the guitar players get to play. Not everyone does on our show. And we're going to have you play tonight. Tell us how you went from, you know, analog gear like we all have to where you are today, and then I'm going to just turn the floor to you and let you just bust some riffs.
Well, I mean, I got my first Marshall probably is JMP 74, I think it was, probably in when I was 17.
Okay.
In a 412 cabinet, and I used a super overdrive. You know, that when it first came out, you know, that was the pedal and the chorus pedal, and that was my tone. I mean, Zakk Wylde still kind of uses that that setup with JCM 800s. And so then I went through just a bunch of different Marshalls, you know, some were modded, some were older. I had some Plexis, you know, which I sold, which was not smart.
Yep.
And, you know, I kept experimenting, but it was always Marshalls. And then when I moved to LA, I started working with this guy named John Cascia, and we worked on a preamp called a Rock Mod. And he was like one of the first guys to take like 512A. Now I'm going to geek out on some gear geeking.
Sure,
okay?
Sure, it's good.
You know, 512AX7s and put them into, you know, a preamp, 3 for the gain stage and 2 for the clean channel. And, you know, because most distortion in the older days were, you know, was like on Van Halen 1 or Ed's tone, use a Variac and put it down 90 volts, and it's the tubes are sucking. Like the best sound you ever have with a Marshall is when you turn it off and it's dying.
Yeah. It's that sag and almost down to nothing.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where the Brown sound came from. That's what the Variac does to the head, you know, because it's trying to get that voltage. Hey, help me, give me some voltage.
I know, I'm fading, scrubbing bubbles going down the drain.
Exactly. And so, and he brilliantly used that. But a lot of the breakup also, not only that, it was the so that was actually more power amp tube section than it was preamp.
Okay.
And so then. Speaker breakup too, because they use lower wattage speakers, but he actually used JBL 120s on Van Halen 1 too, in the top part of the cabinet. This is and all this is hearsay, but people who were there, I've talked to a few people like Rudy Liren and Ed Zoltek and my friend Dave Marshall, and people that really know a lot about it. And so I mean that's like a holy grail tone, right? So Van Halen 1, so. From there, with this preamp that I helped develop, I used JCM 800s. It tapped into the power. That was in JCM 800 heads. And so I ran that in stereo, and I had this big monster rack, and this thing was a refrigerator. It was a Lukather rack. I call it like Steve Lukather. Vernon
Reid and all those guys.
Yeah, so I gotta have a rack that big. And so, but it sounded killer, man. Stereo cabs. I mean, it was dope. But the techs hated me.
Oh, of course, it's 300 pounds each.
Trying to pull it. I mean, the thing weighed about 450 pounds.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, 300, 400 pounds.
Putting it up on these club stages and stuff. I was just waiting for it to fall through the stages of Roxy or something. And I got kind of tired of dealing with it after a while. So I ended up going to 5150 heads.
Nice.
And just a half stack with the pumps, and I ran a nanoverb in the loop for chorus or maybe a little bit of reverb, and then my pedal boards. I've always been one of those guys that just plug straight in the head.
Okay, you've always been one of those guys.
Yeah,
nice.
Maybe I'm not a big pedal guy. Maybe I run some pedals, but even when I have my Bradshaw rig, that set up, for the Roth tours, plugging straight into the head is the best sound you can get because you're not, the signal's pure. Although each one of the steps that you put a pedal in colors your sound and helps it somehow. That's important too. Even when they're off.
True. When they're bypassed, if they're not a true bypass or a buffered, whatever.
Right. So they're actually coloring your tone and adding or subtracting in some cases, which is also cool too. And so when I started using the 5150 heads, my rig got a lot simpler, and it was easier. It was simpler, and my pedal board right now I'm looking at, it's got a phaser and a flanger on it and a tuner. That's all I use.
That's it. Two main pedals and something to stay in tune with.
Yeah, and because I mean, unless you're running stuff in loops, unless you got a switching system, you have a bunch of pedals. By the time it hits the damn preamp section of the amp, it's sort of like the amplifier's going, "Where's the tone at?"
I know it's lost. It's
Where's
lost.
the signal, man? So my advice to players is don't get too pedal crazy. Yeah, because you're going to end up just not being able to hear the sound. And plus, it tracks better too. I mean, the response,
Yeah.
And the pedals can also create a little bit of latency. So it's that immediate thing with plugging into the amp or hitting it hard like that I always dug.
I have ultimate respect for the guys like yourself that can do right into the amplifier, whether it be a plexi or a high gain amplifier or whatever. Because I'm not one of those guys. I'll be the first guy to admit it that I need my comfort zone, my delays and the loops. I mean, I don't even use pedals anymore. I'm using all digital, which we'll talk about later, and we'll get into your digital too. But with guys like you and Eddie, and there's a young kid here in Canada, Jacob DeRaps. He's kind of like a time capsule Eddie Van Halen in a 20-year-old body, and it sounds just like Eddie Van Halen playing through a plexi. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, and so I mean, I like gain. Don't get me wrong. I mean, but the 5150 had tons of it.
Oh, sure did.
And I couldn't take this preamp out on the road because the guy went out of business and he poured epoxy all over the circuit boards, and there was no schematic for it. I couldn't fix it if something went wrong. And so when I went out with Dave, I used all 5150 heads, because they were easy to find. You could buy them anywhere if something broke or get them repaired. and you just pull the Chinese junk tubes out of them, Chinese tubes.
Yep.
And put some nice Russian tubes in it or whatever's hot that month, which tubes change all the time.
Sure.
Where you can source them from.
Mm-hmm.
And they rocked. They were consistent. So what I did in Roth's band, I had I had my main head, my 5150 head, and it went to a Bob Bradshaw line out, and that went to an H&H power amp for the other side of the stage, which is 800 watts a side.
Nice, that's big.
And so I had, I ran 4 cabinets on one side and 4 cabinets on the other, 4 bottoms, because I wouldn't play tops. Dave wanted me to play tops at first, and I went, I'm not playing top cabinets. You get another guitar player. I'm not going deaf.
Yeah, it's going to blast you right in the face. Yeah, right in the ears.
And so, that was really, for my pedal board was, phaser, flanger, but they were in loops.
Mm-hmm.
I had a little switcher, kick them in and out. The signal just went straight in the head. And I used an anaverb in the loop of the head. To add my chorus, my tech would put it on it for Pretty Woman or little guitars, and a nice chorus effect. And those are like $99 effects units. They sound great. Maybe a little reverb, depending on how dry the club was. That's really comfort food. If the club is, arenas and stuff like that, you never play a reverb because,
Oh, yeah, you didn't need it.
You didn't need it, and it kind of sucked. But if you get, like the Whiskey in Los Angeles, it's the driest stage you ever will play on in your life. They revamped it when they reopened the club, and for front of house, it sounds great because that's what they want. They want to hear every single one so they can mix it out front. But for a player, I'm saying, am I going to turn the reverb on?
Yeah, it's 5 times higher than what you normally would do.
It's like, I suck, but I'm hearing everything that I play,
Make it wet.
Yeah, and so, and I had a wah in the loop, and that was basically my setup. It was pretty basic. And then I had what was called an OF switch.
Okay.
If everything goes wrong, there's another head in the cabinet running all the time. It's just mic'd up. You go OF, and it's,
okay.
And that happens. I only had to use it, a couple of times, but I've had heads blow up and go out. When you're getting paid a lot of money in front of 30,000 people, you got to have a backup.
Oh, of course you do. Yeah, you don't have a chance to say, sorry, my rig's done. I guess we'll have to get off the stage or we've lost a guitar player.
Right.
Yeah, doesn't happen.
Right. It's like, okay, Dave, it's joke time now.
That's right. I'm sure he could do it, but Yeah.
But so. And that involved. I had some more Marshalls, and then a box AC30 and some modeling amps, and some Fenders, Twins, and stuff like that. And then I went to the 5153s, the white ones.
Mm-hmm. Like I have.
Yeah, and those heads were great.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the purple channel. Because it's not real high gain.
Yep.
The 5150s and the high gain channels really they're like the purple Sedona. It's kind of like what I hear, and I don't know if you got the circuit from them or what, but it's just that really high gain stuff, and which is great for some things, leads and things like that, but it still is not that kind of clean, kind of plexi kind of sound. And the purple channel on those heads, I always thought were great. Problem was, I had the 50 watt version and the 100 watt version. The 100 watt version we were talking about last night weighs like 80 or 90 pounds.
It's a heavy head to carry around.
Like, you're not gonna move that.
Yep.
I'm not. So I was working for, after I got out of Dave Roth's band, I got a gig with Gibson Guitar, which I was a clinician for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
That was my main gig. I went out and played, did clinics, probably over 500, clinics for them over the course of 12 years. And, what I used there?
Yeah.
I used the first pod that ever came out.
Okay, right. I think you were telling me that. Yeah, yeah.
And which was great because the rectified setting on the first pod was amazing. And this thing, remember these?
Oh yeah, the red box for sure.
This is the first. Actually, Matt Bruck turned me on to this, Eddie's tech, because Eddie was using it in the studio. So this is a great DI.
Right on.
And I've got a couple, custom audio Bob Bradshaw ones too, if I want to go direct.
Mm-hmm.
But when I was at Gibson, we had these silly tech guitars, and distortion always was horrible with them. So I was always doing research and trying everything, guitar rig, all the Line 6 stuff, the amplitude, IK multimedia, all of that stuff, and it always left me a little, although the pod I thought actually was the best, the first rectified setting on pod 1.0, I still have one of those.
That's
and
nice.
It's a great sound, but it always kind of left me a little wanting more from, the perspective of the way a valve amp responds. with kind of the, I got clean slap,
Yeah.
and pick dynamics. And the harder you hit it, and so, I always had a thing about it sounded great, but it didn't. It wasn't that thing that I was used to. The je ne sais quoi that the tube amp has.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was doing more research and stuff like that, and I came across, I'd heard this thing about a Kemper Profiler, and I'm like, here's another one. Let's see what this is about. So I called one of the local guys up in Nashville. I was living in Nashville the whole time. I had one nice place, a big studio, and he said, yeah, Michael Wagner's using nothing but the Kemper now. I go, bullshit. I know Michael, so I called him because if you don't know who Michael Wagner is, he just
Great White,
Tears, mixed it. He's a great producer. Skid Row, White Line, Metallica, and he had every amp and great mic combination on the face of the planet that you could possibly want. He's got a place out in Mount Juliet outside of Nashville, killer studio.
Mm-hmm.
And I called him up and I said, Michael, this guy says that you're using nothing but Kemper, and I don't believe it. He goes, yep, I am.
He turned Mark Kendall onto it. Mark's been on the show, and Mark was a Marshall guy his whole life. Well, doing Crate back in the day, endorsing that, but a Marshall guy in a later career, and he's turned him on to Kemper. But yeah, and that was Michael Wagner. So
yeah, so and when he told me that, I'm like, hey, Michael, I gotta go buy one of these. I went straight down and got it. And I got it home, and within 5 or 10 minutes, I was hooked. And I'm still learning about the thing. I mean, I'm still tweaking stuff.
Yeah.
And so what I did then is I profiled all my amp collection. I profiled my friends' amp collections. Anybody, hey man, what are you doing? That Friedman head that you have? What are you doing Sunday?
Can I borrow it? Yeah.
I said, hey, you want some beer?
Well, for people that don't know what that is, I'll give them a brief an analogy of it. What it is basically taking a digital snapshot of your amplifier, a digital recording, almost like taking your amplifier. And we talked about it like this last night off the air. We said, for us Van Halen fans that collect all these bootlegs, we used to have all these VHS bootlegs and stuff like that. Now we put them either on a DVD or a Blu-ray, or we put them digital on our computer. That's what the profiling is like. It's like taking a real sample, a blood sample of the amplifier, and sticking it in the amplifier.
You hit it on the head. It's not the Kemper's not a modeling amp. It's a 700K sampler. There
you go.
And I mean, and I had to dig deep. I said, I want to know the frequency, that they're sampling and stuff is, because your best Pro Tools rig, does 192K,
mm-hmm.
right, or whatever. This does 700K.
Jeez.
So it's sampling, the impulse response from the cabs, right?
Mm-hmm.
The head, the mic pre, everything's in a signal chain, gets sampled, and it all matters. What kind of mic you use, what kind of speaker you use, what kind of mic pre you use.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm a 57 SM57 guy, basically, because that's, I've tried all kinds of crap, and 57 is what I always go back to, and that's what 90% of every record you love is recorded with for guitar. And so, after I got all these profiles, I got pretty good at it.
Mm-hmm.
I kept doing it and doing it. And so now I've just got all these. I sold every amp I had.
Got rid of them all.
Except for I got a little Vox modeling amp and a Fender little combo amp. But everything else, I'm like, I don't need it.
Yeah.
And so let me give a shout out real quick to Jed Rothenberg from Bose. They recently endorsed me and gave me one of those L1 towers.
Oh, those are great. Yeah, they're beautiful.
They're great. And so I was looking, because I was kind of nervous. It's because people don't understand the Kemper. It's you can't take this. It's not a head. You can't go put it in a guitar cabinet, because guitar you can, but you have to turn the cabinet off, and your profiles are not going to be as good. And a guitar cabinet, cuts off about at 5K. It just nosedive,
mm-hmm.
5,000 hertz, and you've got to have what's called FR, a full frequency, full range speaker.
That's right.
Which is basically a studio monitor or the equivalent, something
mm-hmm.
like that. And so I was always kind of reticent. I was trying all these different things out, and some of the stuff's really expensive. I plugged it into that Bose, which is FR. It is. I got the newer one with the 210s in the sub, and it's 500 watts RMS. So I mean, it's loud,
Yep.
and it sounds fantastic. That's what Kemper was using in
Their demo
band
rooms?
was Bose Towers.
Nice.
So that's the one we used live for my amp. You know, and what's really cool about that thing, you can walk anywhere around it,
And you still have it. Yeah, it's not
It
directional.
throws like a 180-degree field out, which is amazing.
Yep, because you can walk by a 412 cabinet. As soon as you get off that plane, it's like, oh, where'd my tone go?
Right. You know, so you have a tendency kind of like, I'm gonna stand right here.
I know the magic spot. You mark it like a talk show host.
Right, or you know, or you're trying to get the monitor guy to do a good job, which is never the case.
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, I gave up on that a long time ago. You know, as long as I got kick, snare, and hi-hat, I'm okay.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I started profiling these amps, and I just keep tweaking them. You know, I've got I want to give a shout out to my buddy Shane at British Audio in Nashville. He's got a 50 watt, 100 watt version of a Plexi reissue he builds.
Mm-hmm.
They're phenomenal. I have one of those in here. And I got real Plexis in here. I've got Friedman's, Box. So I tweak on this hard all the time.
That's cool. Well, let's see some of the samples what you've done with it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get you to do a little bit of playing here to show people some of the tones. When we come back, just to give you some food for thought, where I want to make sure, because we're at 10:09 now, we'll wrap up at 10:30, but I want to make sure we talk about the most important thing here this evening as well, too, the 6 Degrees of Van Halen. So when we come back from a little bit of licks, let's talk about that. And if we have any time left, we'll talk about one of those really funny Van Halen or David Lee Roth stories you were telling us last night. So let's hear what we got for some tones.
Okay, so this is a Plexi that I did, and it's kind of a clean. Van Halen is kind of more clean. That's really not that dirty.
Yeah, that's right. That's what we were saying. Where a lot of people go wrong is they want to take the gain and turn it to 10. But Eddie was that cascading gain guy where he would be clean but freaking loud. Watch Us Fest and some of the Brazilian stuff. It's insane how loud it is, and it's just loud. The distortion comes from that volume.
Yeah, I mean, or speaker breakup or whatever. There's all kind of stories out there of what he used, and right now I'm just running through a phaser and a flanger. I want to get one of those Echoplex preamp.
Yeah, they're cool.
They make. A guy that I recently became a big fan of is Pete Thorne. You should have both of us on the show and let's geek out on Van Halen.
Oh, I'd love to have you both on. Yeah, I've had Pete on probably 4 times now. He's a great dude.
He's a great dude, and he's a great player. I mean, and he understands it. I mean, he gets it. So
Love it.
That's I'm gonna turn my mic off for a second.
Sure,
so
go
it
ahead.
Sounds a little better.
Yep.
Okay, so this next one I'm going to do, what I'm trying to do is set up each. I'll turn up a little bit for this one.
Go ahead.
Because I'm using Rig Manager, and some of the profiles are just louder when you do them. But anyway, this is so like.
We lost something there. No problem. A lot of people loving the tones for sure. I still haven't got any audio for vocal or your guitar.
Yeah.
I got your vocal now back.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. My interface just like stopped.
Okay.
It just cut off. When I started turning it up, maybe you don't like that sound. I'm not really sure exactly what happened. There it is. Came back. I don't know. Just let my interface just stop. So one thing about this guitar, I built this.
Nice.
What I did is it's got a divot in it right here where the detuning is, because I
need that.
The bridges back like this, and so I can just drop it down. So I hate floating bridges. And it works pretty well. I mean, the detuning is
That's badass.
Yeah, so I've got a 79, 76, with old flangers, and it's just like, it sounds,
That's great. That sounds just like it.
So that's, and it's got the big power cord on it, as you plug it into the wall and stuff like that,
Yeah, the big, a real AC 3-prong cord.
Right, exactly. And so I've had this thing forever. It's like, since I was 16 years old. And recently I had to have all the pots and the caps, because it stopped working, redone, and the pedal switch and stuff like that. But I mean, it's just the real deal. I mean, you can't get much better than that.
It's hard to simulate it with the newer stuff, although he has a new signature one out there. I mean, it's good, but nothing.
They don't sound the same.
No.
And it just isn't. I mean, they can't get the same parts anymore. They're, from Taiwan and Chinese stuff that was made back in the day. Caps and stuff they use on circuit boards sometimes. They just can't get them.
They're obsolete now. They're not manufactured. Yeah. Well, we're at 10:15 right now. I want to talk a little bit about the 6 Degrees, because I also want to give a nod to our friends over at Van Halen News Desk, Jeff and crew there. They did a nice story on you today. And I think people are going to be really impressed if they don't know the story already. So, you've kind of taken a little bit of break from the Van Halen thing for a little bit now. And now you've got this crazy, crazy project going on. Tell us all about what 6 Degrees of Van Halen is, and what it's going to kind of encompass so far, and what you're aiming to get out of it.
Well, when I left Dave's band, I moved to Nashville. I got a publishing deal for a minute there, because I write country stuff too. And I also do film and television music. Anything, to feed the bulldog, so to speak. You got to do. And I just kind of fell in, like I always do. I fall into these things. I fell into a gig at Gibson for 12 years. Like I said before, doing clinics and stuff. And but when I was at that gig, I couldn't do anything else really, because I couldn't present myself, because it would have a conflict of interest if it wasn't completely. I mean, I can't go play this guitar. I'm playing. I'm working for Gibson. I had to take my website down too, because I had all these Strat headstocks and stuff on it. And so for a long time, and I got married during that time period too, which I should have kept moving through Nashville. That's where I met my wife. But I'm divorced now.
Okay.
But anyway, so I couldn't do anything. I mean, and so all my musical stuff had to be geared toward what I was doing, my guitar clinics and things like that, which is fine. It's good, but even playing live, I was reticent to do it, because I didn't want to get send the wrong messages out to I was a corporate guy for a while, and so then that gig ended a couple of years ago, and I ended up building a studio and remodeling a house in Florida that I bought, which is great. Because it's paid for, and it's a pretty nice studio. And so I've been teaching and doing sessions and recording people and producing, doing things like that. Well, but when I start playing guitar again, when I pick it up, sometimes it always leads me back to Van Halen. No matter what I'm doing, I always kind of steer back, and maybe I'll play Unchained to warm up, or maybe I'll play, because this is my favorite Van Halen song.
Mine too.
Or maybe I'll play whatever, and these licks or anything like that, because it always feels good. You know what I mean? And so Kieran McClelland was Dave Ross' tour manager and front of house guy on my tours I did with Dave. He's the guy that got me into the gig. Finally, Dave had seen me and everybody knew about me and stuff like that. But Kieran and Allison Ross, his sister, came down to see us in that strip club in Pasadena, where we always played, and he did the final scouting. And ever since then, I've been real tight with him. I've kept in touch with him over the years. It's been 20 years since I've done that tour. And kept in touch. And so he came to Florida where I was living at, and he was tour managing this ABBA tribute band called ABBA Mania. And they were playing in a performance arts center in my town there. And it was like 3,000 seater, real nice. You know how those performance arts centers are. They're usually on college campuses. They're kind of above theaters and clubs. You know, there's really, because they're made for musicals, really. And acoustically, they're perfect. And it was just really great. And it was like 3,000 people in this thing watching it. I'm going, like, these tribute bands have gotten so huge, I can't believe it now. I mean, just, you know, there's a lot of them, and they're doing really well. So I looked at the schedule of this performing arts center, and I saw this company that was doing like Led Zeppelin 2, The Wall. They were creating one album at a time, and with players, you know, that you may not have heard of, but sometimes, you know, Beatles, Abbey Road, they had like 20 people on stage, you know, with the string section and stuff to play it. And so I'm like, nobody's doing Van Halen. I'm like, I can do that. Yeah, I didn't really want to play in a tribute band, like a traditional one. So, I mean, it took me almost 6 years. The guys were on me all the time, put stripes on my guitar.
Yeah.
I wasn't really trying to beat Eddie, you know.
Right.
That was, you know, I had hair kind of like his, but, you know, I looked that way, but I mean, you know, I was kind of always a little reticent, you know, like, you know, I wasn't trying to copy, you know, down, you know, overalls and all that kind of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. I got a lot of respect for tribute bands. I was in one. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying. So I started thinking of like, well, I can do that. I mean, and so I started talking to Kieran, and he thought it was a great idea. So we partnered up, and he started making phone calls. I started making phone calls. I'm like, who can I get into this that, you know, is actually played with the guys in Van Halen? You know, Sheehan being one of them, mm-hmm. me being another, because we were in Lost bands, or anybody has kind of a special connection to it, you know. And so I started thinking about that. I'm like, what does all this mean, you know, as far as like, with 6 degrees of separation between the players in Van Halen, right?
Right.
You know, we're kind of an extended family of Van Halen, if you will. And then I go, well, there's, you know, 6 degrees of that, and there's 6 albums, there's 6 years, 6 strings. So I used that whole kind of, you know, 666.
Yeah.
Idea to come up with this thing. So I called up Billy, and he said, sounds great. Okay, you know, I'm in. And then Kieran, you know, knew Brett Tuggle from the Ian Smile Band, keyboard player. I got to have a keyboard player to play, you know, some keys and the rhythm parts, you know, behind. Very, very few of them, but there's some rhythm parts that, you know, you play on guitar that you want there, like Running with the Devil and City of Love Tonight, and especially on Fair Warning, a lot of them too. And then he knew Paul Sortino, who used to be in Quite Right and Rough Cut. He's a great vocalist, real bluesy sounding. And so it just started from there, and the response has been really positive. So what I want to do is take this thing, you know, into performance arts centers and theaters, and we might have to do some club gigs to get it off the ground. But each one of the chairs, I want 3 deep, you know, so that I can keep going, being on these guys' schedule, because it's going to be, you know, being players of this stature and ilk it's going to be difficult to, you know, have them, you know, all the time. You can't, you know. There are other bands. I mean, Sheehan's in 20 bands. You know, but I wanted something that I could keep going without having, you know, to, you know, worry about, you know, a core band and somebody leaving or whatever, you know. And so now I'm going to complicate my life even further and have 4 singers.
Wow.
And I mean, so I got my short list of guys. I mean, I haven't, some of the cats, you know, that eventually we'll talk to, you know, Bissonette being one of them, the drummer.
Yeah.
You know, Portnoy. I mean, I haven't talked to Billy about that yet, but Portnoy would be a great guy to have in it. And I know he's a huge Van Halen fan. I don't know him. I mean, I know Scott Soto and Ron Thal, but the Sons of Apollo, but I don't know, you know, Portnoy. He's in Winery Dogs with Billy too.
I think Mike would maybe be I mean, I would like to say strongly would be interested in that. You know how much he loves Van Halen, and he also know how much he's a glutton for his own punishment when it comes to joining other bands. I could see there being some interest in that for sure, especially when, you know, he, like, I mean, you're a great guitar player. He likes to play with talented musicians, and he's obviously played with Billy in multiple groups. So I think that'd be a nice fit. And someone also suggested that today on our Facebook page when we said, talking about you, someone said Mike Portnoy would be a great fit, and I was like, hell yeah.
He seems like a really cool guy. I mean, that's important too. The guys I went to first are the guys I knew, I hung out with and stuff like that. And so, I mean, I have talked to other people. I can't announce them yet because they got to clear the shit with the bands because, I mean, it's when they're on retainer or something like that, they can't, if they're, hey, I'm in another band. And Billy just loves to play. He's just a great guy. And so, and after we were talking last night, I talked to some people today. I'm also thinking, how they did this Hendrix thing recently where there's a bunch of guitar players in it and toured. I mean, like
Experience Hendrix or whatever it's called?
Yeah. I thought, well, maybe I can do that where I have maybe 2 guitar players, myself, or 2 bands and do 2 records. Or, because, I mean, as far as guitar players, I mean, I'd love to have something like John Five and, Nuno Betancourt and, because, I mean, I'm a producer, so I've got, vested interest in the ownership of it, the idea and stuff like that. So, I've trademarked the name, and it's got, the website will be classicvanhalenlive.com, which will be out soon. It's not up yet.
Great.
And I'm doing demos, Paul Sortina's singing on them. I'm playing on them, to kind of get a feel of what the band's about. And, I think once it gets going, I think it'll pique some interest from other players and stuff like that. And another vocalist like Corey Taylor, I mean, you saw that stuff he was doing with Anthony and John Five at the Whiskey. You saw that video, right?
Oh, I did. I loved it, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that guy Slipknot, different bands, but I'd love to get him. And, a lot of these guys, like I said, what's so cool about this, no one's asked me about the money yet. I mean, it's because, I'm going to split everything 5 ways with everybody after, agent fees and my production fee, but, and overhead. But I mean, it's good to show you what kind of. Hold on a second. I got. Let me turn this off.
No problem.
So it's just to show you what kind of ilk these players are. They're into it. And I think most people will be into it. Because it's paying homage. I mean, it's just like I was telling Billy or anybody else I talked to about. Where are you? Hold on a minute. Where else are you going to go out and play a set of Van Halen, start to finish, Van Halen 1, or Fair Warning, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even get to do that in my tribute bands. We can do that live with a bunch of great players. And that's kind of the draw, I think, for this. And we're going to try to do one album at a time, featured, and then some of the solo band members' stuff, like with Billy or the guitar, and Paul, who's got Quiet Riot stuff, or whoever's in the band that has other, been in other bands. And then some additional Van Halen, thrown in there to fill up, an hour and a half or whatever. So, I think it's going to be a good thing. Like I said, the response has been really great so far.
Well, that's good. I'll look forward to having you back in a few months, and we're going to wrap up here in a second, and it actually is perfect timing for the sole fact that I'm looking at my internet right now, and it's dropping, and we made it through 90 minutes, and it's, as you know, I've been telling you my horror stories here with our internet. It's only in the evenings. And something I didn't get a chance to tell you, I had a phone call tonight before going live on the air, and it was like a supervisor from our ISP. It's a pretty big company too. And, I made a pretty public statement saying how upset I was with our internet. And as I'm speaking right now, I'm seeing the numbers just drop. I'm really surprised we made it through. And he checked out our YouTube channel. He's a fan of what we're doing. He says, I want to assure you that our company is working on this for you. We like what you're doing, and we want to make it good for your viewers. So hats off to the supervisor at Kojiko, who is our internet provider. I'm going to try to make this better. So we're going to get all this fixed. There won't be any technical problems like this. But I want to really, really thank you for your time this evening. I think this is going to be a great thing for Van Halen fans. And I do want to get you back. We'll say maybe 3-4 months. We'll get this ball rolling with you a little bit. And you can come back and give us a scoop. Who knows? Maybe Mike Portnoy will be in your band at that time.
It's going to take a while to get this off the ground. I mean, the performing arts centers, a lot of these are booked up a year in advance.
Mm-hmm.
And, so hopefully in the fall, I'm trying to pick up some festivals. And everybody's got to get the summer tour schedule out of the way and stuff like that. So what I'm doing is all the groundwork now to do this. And I think it's going to be something we can do for a long time. And guys can come and go as they please and sit in. I think it's just going to be a real rush.
I think so.
More than anything else attached to do this. So I really appreciate you having me. Thanks a lot. I mean, I've been a fan of yours for a while now, watching the show. I think what you're doing is a great thing.
Well, I appreciate it as well, too. And don't be alarmed if you see my camera go back off again as well. I just turned it off for a second. I'm trying to save that last little bit of bandwidth, but I appreciate the kind words. It means a lot. And, it's a lot of work to put these shows on and make them go smoothly, even when we have technical problems, and we always work through it. So hearing some nice words like that, I promise I'll work hard to earn those. And I wanted to say, thank you to everybody tonight for joining in the chat. We've had some great people here watching and listening and commenting, and there were some great, victories tonight. Some people overcoming some battles, and that's awesome. We praise that for you. I just want to also mention, too, that we'll be back on. Internet will be good on the weekend, because it is good on the weekends during the afternoons, 3 o'clock Eastern Time on Sunday. I'm doing the Helix Hour show, and we've got from Shania Twain's band and the Canadian band Toque, Corey Churko is on the show, so that'll be an hour show on Sunday. But we made it through. We're almost about ready to lose internet. I'm going to try to get the last little bit of juice out of this thing. The little warning lights come on saying you're out of gas.
Make them give you fiber optic. They can wire it right to your house.
They can't. I live in like Mayberry, Andy Griffith, the sheriff, and it's pretty small town here. But we'll be getting better pretty soon. I have confidence in the company. So listen, my friend. Don't go away. I'm going to say goodbye to you off the air if we still have any internet left to speak. And everyone in the chat, thank you so very, very much. This was a great night. And be sure to watch for 6 Degrees of Van Halen from Bart Walsh in the very near future. Everyone, we'll see you real soon. And until next time, cheers.
Hey, you're still here? Eric Jr. here, reminding you to check out our full lineup of quality merch. Available right now in the Broadstash Boutique. Quality products and fast shipping. Visit broadstash.com today.
I am now on Patreon. If you enjoy my content and wish to support my channel and what I do, then please check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/evhgeartv. Your support assures the continued growth of this channel and a fun community in which to share our love for Van Halen, music gear, and much more.
My name is Eric and I've been looking guitar.
Video production services provided by Design 39 Media. Visit design39media.com for all your website, photography, and video production needs. Microphones for EVH and Gear TV are provided by Rode Microphones, and official Van Halen merchandise is provided by VanHalenStore.com.